Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the French Watch Collector. Today on the bench, you can see we have a very unique watch, a watch with some complications. So you can see there is a moon phase and triple quintième. So it means that you have the day, the date, and the month. So we have three information from the date, and obviously you will have the time with a center second. You can see it running. So I just checked there, and you see the time to change, and the day jumped. Here you can see on the side you have some pushers if you want to set the date. And let's go to see what we have inside, which movement we have inside. So we can see first we have a rotor, so it means it's automatic movement. So yes, so that's automatic winding watch, so that's quite nice. You can see the information there, 25 joules on movement. So first, let's remove the rotor. You can see there is a little clip that I need to move that unlatch the rotor. So we can see the movement is beating, but it's very low amplitude. It's not beating very well. The watch is quite old, and you can see a number under the balance assembly. It's a Felsa 693. So it's an old movement, and like I said, with quite a lot of complication for this age. Yeah, and it's one as well of the series of movement, which is one of the first automatic movement we can wind both ways. We will see the mechanism a bit later when we do the reassembly. So now just remove two screws. That keeps the movement in place in the watch. And I try to remove the movement, but you can see it doesn't want to come off. So there is probably the watch is coming from the front. So I'm just looking, see if I can open the front side with a blade there. Just, yeah, you can see I just slide the blade underneath. I just managed to pop it open. So now I took the movement out with the dial. I just lining up the hands, put a protection on top of it, and with a version tool, a Presto tool, sorry, from version, I'm just removing the hands. So you saw there is an extra hand, there is a hand to indicate the date. So you can see the date number around the dial. So let's put the hand aside and keep them safe for now in this little box. So I just tried to remove now the dial, but there is no screws. So it looks strange. And actually we will see a bit later on in a video, yeah, there was a quick fix that was done to set the dial on the watch by the previous watchmaker, which it's not a nice fix. So I will try to fix this mistake and to have it properly sorted out, yeah. We'll do that a bit later, but for now, I managed to remove the dial with a pair of tweezers. Okay, so you can see underneath, we'll have 3 discs, one for the month, that's the first one I'm going to remove with a pair of carbon tweezers. One for the day. There we go. And the last one at the bottom is for the moon phase. So that's basically 3 complications there, extra complication on the watch. And you can see all these parts to make sure this calendar and the moon phase are working. So that's quite a lot of extra parts on top of the normal mechanism, of the standard mechanism. So there I'm just disassembling everything, just removing the cannon pinion there with a Presto tool. And we move to the other side. Just going to remove the mechanism for the winding, so automatic winding. So that's again, it's an extra set of complication with extra parts. And you can see that's an early automatic winding system with a very unique design. You have these 2 wheels with this arm in the middle that can rock and activate one or the other wheels to make sure when the rotor turns both ways, it will still wind the watch. So like I said, that's one of the first movements from the Felsa. I think it's from the 690 series. So you see this one is a 693 with extra complication on it. But it's one of the first movement for bidirectional automatic winding. Okay, and you can see there is still one wheel, but I need to remove the balance assembly because the wheel is going underneath the balance bridge there. So that's quite a pretty tight design. There is not a lot of space, so you can see the wheels was under the parts there, so I could not remove it without removing the balance assembly. Okay. So now we try to remove the power from the watch, and you can see there was a bit of power in a watch. Okay, and I can carry on with the disassembly by removing the pallet fork. If you observe there is, I realized a bit later, but there was a part missing on the watch. I don't tell you right now which one it is, but there is a part missing on the movement that I managed to source and fix a bit later in a video. But yeah, I could not see it straight away. Okay, so now I'm carrying on with the disassembly, removing this bridge, which is basically it's only one bridge, which where you have the train of wheel and the barrel assembly. Here we go. So now I'm removing the train of wheel with the escape, the fourth, the third wheel. So that's the third wheel. You can see it's like a double level. There is two wheels on the same pivot if you want. It's like a two-level wheel. Just checking if everything looks good. And there you can see there is another bridge under the main bridge that I just removed. So this one basically you will have, so this one was pretty tight. It was in place, but it was pretty tight and I didn't want to damage any parts. So and there is a central second, you can see pinion there, which on there. That's a mainspring barrel assembly, which look a bit strange. We see when we disassemble it. And that's the center wheel. Could not remove it, it was a bit tight, so I didn't want to use too much force, so I just press it from the other side. Okay, so already there is a couple of difference on this mechanism. Like we saw, the winding system is not the same, and the mainspring barrel is looking a bit weird. So that's what I told you when I removed the dial. There was no dial fits, and actually the previous watchmaker glue the dial or using this sticky piece here to keep the dial in place. So that's a quick fix if you want, but we see if we can sort it out later and do the proper things by adding some fit to the dial. Okay, so now I'm disassembling the rest of the calendar mechanism, which is a bit more complex than a standard calendar mechanism with a lot more functions. So you can see it's quite a lot of springs, arms that need to be removed, pushers, because you will have the pusher to set the quick set date if you want to change the day, the date, the months, the moon phase very quickly. So you will have pushers on the side. Just removing all the driving wheels that drive this mechanism together to make sure the dates are changing at the same time. Okay, so now I remove all the parts from the calendar and I need to remove this plate. So basically you can see it's a layer on top of the standard mechanism. Obviously they added an extra plate. So I'm removing these two screws there and try to remove, but yeah, you can see there is still something. So there is another screw there. There is a lot of screws because like on a chronograph mechanism, I put the screw back. When I disassemble the part, I put the screw back on the mechanism to make sure when I will assemble the watch again, I use the right screw at the right place. Okay, you can see, so now I remove the plate that's used for as a support for the calendar mechanism. And basically underneath, we have a standard keyless work with all the parts like the minute wheel, the setting lever, the setting lever spring, the yoke. So all the parts like we are like basically like on a standard movement. So I'm going to disassemble all these parts, and like I always do after, the next step will be to put everything into a cleaning machine, because you can see when the watch was running, the balance wheel was moving like very slowly, so with a very, very low amplitude. So this watch probably did not have a service for a long time, so a lot of dried up oil and grease. So that's why this movement need to have a good clean. And hopefully, if we have done it properly, when we put it back together with brand new oil and grease, yeah, the movement will run perfectly again for many, many years. Okay, so now you can see I'm removing all the parts from the keyless works. That's the yoke spring, the yoke there. So like I said, this is a pretty standard mechanism, and you can see the setting lever there. I could not remove because there is basically two kind of setting lever systems. There is one which is kept in place with tension of a spring on top of it, or is the setting lever is screwed in place. So that's the case. So you have to unscrew it from the other side. Personally, I prefer the other design because this one, especially when doing assembly, it's always tricky to keep the setting lever in place while you screw it from the other side. I much prefer the design where you have a spring that keep it in place. So here we go. Now we have the watch which is fully disassembled. The last piece that need to be disassembled is the mainspring barrel assembly, and you see when we remove it, it was a bit strange. Yeah, looks like the barrel arbor is different, so I could not open it like I usually do. So I have to use a pair of tweezers, and you can see there I remove the lid, and on the lid there is basically looks like a part which is like it's one piece, like a part of the barrel arbor. So that's a very different design compared to other watches. So now I'm going to remove the mainspring, and that need to be clean as well. We clean everything, so the mainspring and the two parts. So to make sure, like again, like inside there is like that's what gives the power to the watch. So the amplitude to the watch. So you want it to be as clean as possible, to have no extra friction, and to give all the power and don't waste any power with dried up grease or oil. Yeah. Okay, so everything is disassembled. We run it through the cleaning machine, and now basically we have a movement which is fully clean with all the parts which are fully clean. So the first step after cleaning will be to oil the jewels, which is on the balance assembly. So you can see there I removed it, put a bit of oil. So I put some low viscosity oil, some 9010. Just put the part on the top, and when it's assembled, I just put it back on the balance assembly. I'll always treat, so you can see in my previous video, I do a treatment as well with epilem. So that keeps the oil in place and we give it a bit more life, and to make sure the oil stay at the right place during the use of the watch. And here I did exactly the same on the other side, treat it with epilem, put some oil, and now I'm just placing it back into this pot with the springs that come on top of it, so that we protect the pivot from the balance assembly from breaking. Okay, so that's the center wheel. I'm putting a bit of grease there before putting it back on the mechanism. So this will go underneath the mainspring assembly. So I need to put it first. Put a bit of medium viscosity oil there. So I use some 9104. And I put the mainspring assembly that I reassemble and clean, but we will see later something went wrong there, and yeah, we'll have to take some action to correct that. Okay, I'm putting the bridge back on top of the center wheel. Just do the same. I do some epilam treatment on the escape and the pallet fork. So just I put it in epilam, just wait for a few seconds. And when it's done, just put it on a piece of paper to dry them. And I'm cleaning the pivot with a piece of wood there to make sure there is no epilam on the pivot point where the parts are rotating. So that will be useful when I grease after and use some grease on the pallet fork. So that's a really important step. Like I did on the jewel from the balance assembly, is to make sure that the grease in this case stay at the right place. Okay, so now I'm putting back the train of wheel. So you can see this one has a long pivot. So I just need to make sure, not yet. You will see, perfect. You see when it, not yet. There we go. Now it just falls into the jewel. It's standing straight up. You feel it and you see it immediately when it's in place. Putting a bit of oil there for the central second pinion. Just put it in place. So you can see that is the second is driven by the third wheel. Putting the screw there because the screw for that keep the setting lever in place. Just before I put the main plate. Okay, so now putting the main plate, and I just need to make sure everything aligns perfectly. So that's a big main plate because you will have all the mainspring barrel and the train of wheel that need to be aligned. And you can see when everything is aligned, I turn the mainspring and like all the train of wheel is turning. So it means that everything is in place. I secure everything with some screws. So now we move to the other side. So the train of wheel and barrel assembly is done. So we are moving to the keyless work. So first I put a bit of grease, some high viscosity grease because that's a place I see a lot of pressure and wear. So I use some 9501 there. So I put the winding pinion into the groove. There we go, perfect. Putting the clutch. And now I'm putting some high viscosity grease on the winding stem. And I will put that through the parts. You can see you have a square parts that need to be aligned in the winding pinion, and here we go. Now it's in place. I'm putting the setting lever that I was talking about a bit earlier. So you see, I need to put it on top of the screw there. So that's the side where you have the thread, and I need to screw it from the other side while keeping it in place with one of my finger. So that's something I don't really like to do. It's a bit fiddly. Prefer the other type of design. Putting the yoke. There we go. So you can see, so on this side is a pretty standard mechanism with the strong spring there, the yoke spring. Always use a pair of stick to make sure it doesn't fly. There we go, it's in place. Just make sure it's sitting all the way. And there, that's the setting lever spring. It has a huge screw on top of it. That's nice. It's easier to work with big screws than a smaller screw. And it's an opportunity to use your big screwdriver that you don't use a lot normally on watches. So I'm putting back the cannon pinion, which is friction mounted. So you need to use a bit of thread there to put it in place. And after oiling all the pivot point, we put the wheels and a part there that makes sure everything will stay in place. So this one you can see compared to the setting lever spring, it has two little screws, two little tiny screws, which are, yeah, and you need to use a very small screwdriver, and yeah, it's a lot more difficult to put like small screws compared to the big one we just put before. Okay, so the keyless work is done. Now we just move back to the other side and we are going to put the pallet fork assembly. So first I put the pallet fork and the pallet fork hook on the top. Just need to make sure the pallet fork is aligned on the bottom and top pivot. The pivot are very thin and you don't want to bend them when you put these screws in place. And after putting a bit of wind, you can see there is some power. But I just realized when I was winding the watch, something was really strange. And actually, I put the mainspring the wrong way around. Yeah. So I decided to disassemble everything, re-clean everything, re-lubricate everything. You can see there, I put some dark grease, some black grease. That's for special automatic movement, some P125. And I'm putting a new mainspring just to make sure I will have as much as power as I can. And you could see that normally I put it on the blue side, which is the correct side, but there I put it on the other side. Is turning the other way around, compare, like you can see the spring is turning anti-clockwise. On most of the watch is turning clockwise. So yeah, that's something I missed during the disassembly. And actually when I was winding the watch, it was jumping and it was not doing anything, or very low power. So yeah, that's why I decided I had to disassemble everything and reassemble the mainspring assembly with the proper spring in a proper way. So now basically, what we have to do, I did not disassemble the keyless work and the central second, but we have to reassemble all the rest. Yes, which means we have to reassemble all the train of wheel, like we did previously. Okay, so put the escape wheel in place. Okay, so if you like my video, I would be very grateful if you can subscribe to my channel. You click on the bell icon so you will get some notification. And if you like the video, please click on a like. That will help me to keep motivated and support me on my journey. So thanks for subscribing and keeping watching my videos. As well, in the description down below, some people ask me a question about the equipment that I use, like the tools or the product for, like for example, oil or grease. I put some links in my description of the video. So if you want to see some tools that I use or some products that I use, please feel free to have a look. And if you don't find what you are looking for, just put a comment in a video and I will be more than happy to try to answer and guide you on your question. And remember, I'm not a professional. I do this as an hobby. Yeah? I'm not a watchmaker. I did not study anything in watchmaking. I study in engineering, so very different. But I really like mechanical objects, and obviously the watch movements are only mechanical. So that's why I like to work on these pieces. So yeah, I'm not professional, so yeah, I don't know everything on the watches. And if you see anything that can help me to progress, please, same again, put it down in a comment. And it's always nice to learn new things on a hobby. Yeah? Okay, so now I reassemble and greased and oil everything. So let's put the balance assembly. Wow, and you can see he went straight away, like he even did not hesitate 1 second, like the balance assembly just started. And the amplitude compared to when we opened the watch was looking way different. So we'll see later on when we put it on a time grapher which kind of result we are getting, but so far it looks promising. Okay, so now we have done the movement, like if you want the basic movement. Now we are going to add the complication. So first we are going to do the calendar, and after we are going to do the automatic complication. So you can see I put the plate, which is a support for the calendar mechanism, and we are going to put all the parts back from the calendar mechanism. So the wheels, you can see the wheels have a screw, and the screw have a shoulder. So the wheels is rotating around the shoulder of the screw. So you need to make sure that each shoulder is lubricated with the proper oil to make sure the movement run smoothly and you don't have any friction in the parts. And yeah, I need to put back some of the screws. So sometimes it's a bit tricky. You can see there, I'm holding the spring with one tweezer, putting a screw with another one, so keeping everything under tension. Using my other hand to put two screws to use a screwdriver to put the screw in place. So yeah, can be a bit tricky sometimes, a bit of gymnastic, but yeah, that's what makes it interesting to work on this complicated movement. Okay, you can see, so that's a arm that I use to activate when you push a pusher to have a quick set date or changing the moon phase quickly to set up the watch. So you have a lot of arm and spring as well to make sure the dates are jumping around midnight normally. So we see if we can set it up properly to have it the watch jump around midnight. And I don't know if you notice when I started the watch and tried the mechanism, actually the month is not connected to the day and date and the moon phase. So if you want the day, date, and moon phase are moving every time at midnight, but the months, when you are the 30 or the 31st, doesn't jump automatically. You will have to do it manually. It's not like an annual calendar or perpetual calendar that everything will move at the right date at the right time and you don't have to do anything. If you have power in a watch, it will do it on its own. So the months, you will have to do it manually. You will have to do the change manually every month. So I don't know, I never worked or never saw annual or perpetual calendar, but this movement already are a bit complex, so I cannot imagine like a perpetual or annual calendar, how many parts and how many extra parts you have compared to this one, and the extra difficulties in assembling and setting like the watch correctly. Yeah? Okay, so now putting like against like the arms and screw on the calendar mechanism. There was one screw as well that was broken, so probably by the previous watchmaker when he disassembled the watch, it was broken in half. So I managed to find online a screw from this movement. I was really lucky because I was really scared that I couldn't find a part for this old movement. It's probably a movement from the 50s and not such a common, like it's not, you don't see this movement a lot. So yeah, I was lucky enough to find it. I was pretty pleased with it, and that's part as well. A joy of this hobby is like part hunting. When you have an old watch, sometimes yeah, it can take days, weeks, months to find the parts for your that you are looking for your movement. Obviously, if you are a much more experienced watchmaker, you can make the part yourself, but I'm not at this level yet. Maybe I even don't know if I will be one day, but yes, today I don't have the equipment to do the part myself. Yeah. So sometimes yeah, it's like a treasure hunt. Okay, so I move on the other side. I change one part, so you can see that the part where the oscillating weight will come in contact, it was a bit worn off, and the oscillating weight was touching the movement. So I put a new one that I managed to find online as well. So that should reduce the play in the oscillating weight, and you should not have any friction and the oscillating weight touching the movement when it's rotating. And you can see there, like I said previously, like the balance is moving pretty nicely. After you have when you done several watch, you can see when the watch is is running well or no. Yeah. Okay, so now I remove the balance assembly because you remember there is this wheel from the automatic winding system that is underneath the bridge of the balance assembly. So I have to put this wheel there. Obviously, I oiled the pivot point before. And now I'm oiling the pivot point from the other wheels. Here we go. So I'm putting the wheels back in place. And I'm oiling all the points where as well you will have this arm. So this arm will rock left or right. So it will activate one wheel or the other in function if the oscillating weight is turning left or right. So that's how you manage to do the winding in both directions, which is a pretty clever system. And especially for the age, you remember like in 50s, he has no computer or anything. So all the design, we'll have to do all the syncing and the calculation we'll have to do by hand. So that's pretty amazing, like when you think about it. So this spring is pretty strong, so I use a pair of a plastic stick and a tweezer to make sure it stays in place. And you have this bridge has come on top of the automatic mechanism with, again, like on a train of wheels that I need to put in place and make sure everything is aligned properly underneath. So just gently nudging and pushing the wheel in place, and you feel it when everything fell in place. Yeah. Okay, when is it we put the screws just to make sure and to secure everything, and for sure nothing will move after the screws are in place. There we go. And like we done on the bottom side, on the top side as well, we need to oil all the pivot point. Perfect. And you remember I told you there was missing one part that I did not see at the beginning. So I managed to find this old bridge from a movement, from a Felsa movement on eBay. And basically it was missing this cap jewel on, you will see, on top of the escape wheel. So I was pretty pleased to find it. So first I disassemble it. I clean it in a bit of one dip solution. So again, dry it like we did with the cap jewel of the balance. Just dry it on a piece of paper. It's moving, dancing around. Use a bit of Rodico to make it very sparky and fully brand new. And when it is, put a bit of 9010 in the middle. And you will see there, you will say, oh yeah, but I really did not see it at the beginning. Yeah, it was missing there on top of it, on top of the escape wheel. So now it's properly oiled. Okay, so let's move to the case side. The case so is gold plated. There is this glass which is scratched, and I will change it. And I will put all the part first in ultrasonic machine. It's not very dirty, but yeah, it's a bit dirty, so it will do it some good. Just put that in a basket just to make sure it doesn't lose them. And as I mentioned, you can see on the dial there is no dial fit. So I have this system where I can drill manually a hole, put a bit of glue, and after I can put some dial fits on the dial. So basically there is two ways. There is this way, or there is a way where you can solder a dial fit on the dial. I'm still not very 100% confident to do that, but with this technique I'm pretty confident, and it works very well. So you can see on the dial where was all the dial fit, just drill it a bit and put a new one, and it worked perfectly. Okay, so let's move back on the calendar side. Now we are going to add the disc, so the date disc. So you can see there is some spring. First I need to oil, because where you have the screw, yes, there is a shoulder and this is turning, so obviously we'll have some friction, so we need to be properly oiled. Okay, use a piece of carbon tweezer just to make sure we don't scratch the date disc. Do the same thing with the mounts. Put it in place, put a bit of oil. It's always a bit tricky because there is this spring that will help basically when you're around midnight to do the nice jump, the date jump. Put a bit of 9104 there, so the medium viscosity oil. And the last one is the moon phase, which is, by the way, very beautiful. like a very nicely decorated disc. Yeah, which very nice to see. And now I can put back the dial with the proper dial fit. And there we go. Now we have the watch, the dial which is in place. One thing that I did not like on the watch was the loom on the hand. It was redone. I don't think it was original. It was green. It was standing out a lot on the watch. So I decided to do a more subtle loom that doesn't pop in your face. So I just did it with a bit of white, a tiny bit of green, and I just added a tiny bit of coffee to have a bit more of a vintage look. Mix everything all together, and I will put that. There we go on the hand. So that you need to spread it evenly on the back side of your hand, and you don't want to put too much or too little. Just want to put the right amount, not to have a big lump of loom underneath. And now that the hands are done, we can start putting them back on the mechanism. So the first one, it's the date indicator. So I will use this Orotech tool to press it in place. Here we go. Just need to make sure it's aligned with a date. And now I'm just searching for the changing when it's changing up there. So that means it's midnight. Now we know that the date just jumped, so it's just midnight. So we are going to set the hand, so the hour hand and the minute hand, just to midnight. So put the hour hand first. Just press it with the same tool. Press it in place. Do the same with the minute hand. Just put it in place. We'll align it to midnight as well. Perfect. Bit more. Yeah, that looks like it's aligned. And I will just press it again with the Rotec tool. There we go. So now we have the hour minute done. The last one for the center part, it's the second hand. Just push it in place and you can see it's already running, and just pushing a gentle press on top of it just to make sure. And now the moment of truth, and you can see if it's changing just after midnight. That's fine. My rule of thumb is like want to change it 15 minutes or 15 minutes before, 15 minutes after. So that was okay. I'm just putting a new crystal. So that that's a watch will look brand new. When you change a crystal, it makes a huge difference. So that's the case that came out of the ultrasonic machine, and I'm putting a bit of molykote there because you can see the pusher or the glass or the case back. There is no O-rings or anything to do it to protect it from moisture. So I put a bit of grease there. That's not an amazing problem. Obviously, you cannot go to swimming with this watch, but it will prevent a bit of moisture to go into the mechanism. So now I'm just putting the mechanism and a dial back in place, just pressing underneath like the pusher to make sure it goes and it's not touching anything, and it will sit down flat, and here we go. You can see now it just went down. Just checking. Yeah, it looks like the movement is sitting down. I do the same trick there. I'm putting some molykote all around where I will put the top parts, just to make sure again, to try to do some like prevent moisture to go through. It will add an extra protection. Just click it in place. Okay. Looks like it's missing two parts actually. So just putting back the winding stem there that I removed to be able to put the movement in the case. Put the the screws that will keep the movement from moving in the watch case. I will keep it in place. This one doesn't want to cooperate. Here we go. And the last parts, the rotor from the winding mechanism, the oscillating weight, and click. You just click in place there. And the same technique again. I will just put a bit of greaser when I put the case back to try to have a seal for moisture, to prevent moisture to go into the watch. And here we go, just put the case back, and that's it. Basically we are done. And let's see which kind of result we are getting. So first let's check the date. I just moved it a bit. Yeah, and you can see now it's just jumping perfectly. The day, the date, and the moon phase are jumping pretty close. You can see the quick save date by pushing on the side, the pushers. I can change months, the date. That's the moon phase. I can adjust the moon phase, and the last one on the top, I can adjust the date. Perfect. Everything is working. I'm pretty pleased with the result of this watch, and it's looking stunning. And you can see it now on a time grapher. You can see the amplitude is around 280, 276, 280. And when the watch settles down, you can see the rate around 4 seconds, 0 seconds a day with a good amplitude. I could have tweaked a bit more the bit error, but yeah, that's a manual tweaking on this mechanism, which 1.8 is not excellent, but it's not too bad. So I'm pretty pleased with the result. So thanks for watching the video, and I hope to see it on my next video. Bye bye.